Hello, everyone, and welcome back. We are live after the final siren after another massive weekend of footy and a lot of carnage coming for a lot of us coaches. And pretty much every coach would have copped a bullet in some shape or form. And if you didn't, you should buy a lottery ticket. I'm your host and AFL Fantasy Fanatic, Bales, and you can find me at BalesDT on Twitter and all the other socials. For those listening back to the pod, it's Sunday, the 21st of April. And you can find us live on Twitter and YouTube. Thanks to all that have already sent in their questions, and make sure you comment on those platforms to name a player you want discussed or a question you want asked. And if we don't cover it during the show, we will discuss them before we wrap up. So not joining me tonight is Tim. He is currently unavailable tonight, so it'll just be me. But I have got a couple of very special guests, so let's get and introduce these guests. So starting off is a man that you will know from HatChat. It is DC, mate. How are you?
Good, mate. Thanks for having me on again.
Have a good weekend. Enjoyed the footy on the weekend, mate?
Yeah, it was a bit of a topsy-turvy weekend, wasn't it? There's a few really standout performances and quite a few frustrating ones this weekend. So, yeah, keen to get stuck in and chat through all the issues.
Yeah, exactly. No, definitely an interesting weekend of footy. And joining me is another very special guest. You will know him as the Value King. And third from, I believe, was 2021. It is DT Lemon, mate. How are you?
I'm very well, thanks. Thanks for having me on, Bales, and good to chat with DC as well. Yeah, a bit of a weird week. Looks like we're starting to get a little bit of carnage come through, so it's going to be some tricky decisions, I think, for coaches in the next few weeks. So keen to talk through them.
Yeah, and it's hit right on the round where we go back to best 22 and DPP. So it's all happening, and we've got footy on Wednesday, so we've only got a couple of days before we have to have our team sort of really get set and ready for the next round. But let's go through the rounds and the scores and everything like that. So, DC, I'll start off with you, mate. How did you go this week, mate? What was your score, rank, and we'll do plus minus threes after. So, yeah, just your score and rank for the moment.
Yeah. So, sorry, did you say me or Lemon?
I said DT Lemon.
DT Lemon. I thought you said DC Lemon. I was so confused.
I think you did say DC Lemon. That was.
Did I? If I did, I apologise. I thought
if we had a fantasy love child, DC, that's what we'd call it. No, it was good. It was a decent week for me. I had a 17-16. So I'm not exactly sure where that puts me in weekly, but my overall ranking slipped a little bit, just outside the top 1,000. Which was not too bad. I had Zach Williams with his injury, and I had a few good scores stuck on my bench that I probably could have got on field. So a few points given away, but overall I was pretty happy with that.
Yeah, no, beautiful, mate. And we will move to DC. What was your score and rank for the weekend, mate?
My score for the weekend was 18-24 at the end of all that stuff that happened. Some good, some bad. Round rank of 12,000, and I've actually moved up still on the back of a 12,000 round rank, which surprised me. So I've moved up to 285th. And I think last week I had about a 4,000 round rank and dropped 50 spots. So I think it just shows that it's been around that a lot of the top teams haven't really gone that well in.
Yeah, exactly. Very, very interesting round, that's for sure. Well, it is good to be the top scoring coach of the podcast. I scored 1869, so big week there. Round rank of 4,543, and that put me up about just under 1,400 spots. So I halved my rank to 1,487, so knocking on the door of the top 1,000, which is nice, and slowly clawing my way to that top sort of 100 and then the Hilux position, which I would love to get to. But we will go through our plus and minus three. So DC, I'll go to you first for this one. Your plus and minus three for the week.
Yeah, I think I've got to give the +3 to Jordan Dawson on Friday night. It's obviously a point of conversation during the week and a point of frustration last weekend, but he bounced back in one of the most spectacular ways possible. 155, he was absolutely everywhere in that game. And we'll see what happens this week when Matt Crouch comes back. But I think Matty Nicks would be silly to move him out of the midfield too much when he's able to be that dominant. So he gets my +3, and then -3, I'll give it to Hayden Young's hamstrings in the last quarter of that game because he was my captain. I was slightly worried about Sheasel getting a tag that didn't really eventuate. So I went with him as my captain and was reasonably happy with it when he was on, I think, 80-something at three-quarter time, and then sat out most of that last quarter. So that was a bit frustrating.
Yeah. I guess we'll have to see what happens. I think Justin Longmuir said that it was a precautionary one, but there was no mention of it from the commentators, which I thought was bizarre.
No.
He was on the bench the whole last quarter, and there was no mention. Everyone was sort of wondering what the hell's going on. So, no idea. We'll have to see if he gets up, but if he doesn't, that's going to create another lot of carnage. DT Lemon, your plus and minus 3 for the week.
Yeah, +3 has to go to the 200 gamer Brody Grundy. So I've been running the 3 ruck setup for the first 6 weeks of the year, and it hasn't really helped me that much so far. But this week it really paid back a little bit with 142 covering for Max Gawn. So pretty happy there. He'll get a nice little cash bump as well, and then I'll be able to flick him on this week, which is exciting to finally get that cash off the bench. So he gets the +3. -3, just like DC, I've got to give it to my captain, Connor Rosie, with a 70 as captain. You know, I was expecting 140 doubled. I wasn't expecting 140 after the doubling. So that was a bit disappointing. I think, like a lot of people, captains were just tough this week. There was a lot of sort of subpar scores from our premiums. So yeah, it was disappointing, but that's all right. We'll move on.
Yeah, well, shout out to Nathan, who captained Jordan Dawson, which was one hell of a move. I'd never
one
really
good move he's made all year.
Oh no, he'll be very, very happy with that. My plus and minus 3. I would have given it to Jordan Dawson. Obviously, it was very good to see him bounce back. But I'll give it to Tristan Sherry. So this week. It was probably the first week I'd really thought about maybe is it going to be maybe in a couple of weeks' time we're going to have to move on Tristan Sherry, but 126. His tackling pressure is just immense. Like every time he sees a player with the ball, he just launches at it, and it is something to behold. And he gave away 4 free kicks and still scored a 126. So he was fantastic, and he's going to be in our teams. I think at least until the round 12 bye, and then we can reassess then. But he'll make some good cash. -3. I was thinking it was going to go to Errol Goulden early, but he saved himself late. But I will give the -3 to Sam Mitchell and Massimo D'Ambrosio for subbing him out. I didn't understand that call. I held him over McKercher with the break even, thinking that Massimo could maybe hit that this week with a good matchup. And with McKercher sort of not sure whether he was playing or not, 87 break even. I was happy to jump off him instead, but turns out I'm probably going to lose more cash from Massimo, so he gets my -3 there. But we will move on to the Content Creators Cup and the weekly results. But first, I'll read out, I've sort of feel special this week. I get to read out Tim's little blurb for the Infinite Wealth stuff. So, Tim, mate, hopefully I do you proud. But AFL Fantasy Content Creators Cup proudly brought to you by Infinite Wealth. Make smarter financial decisions, where winning coaches will get $5,000 for their favourite charity. Reminder that there is something special for every coach available too. Head across to infinitewealth.com.au/AFL Fantasy to claim your free financial freedom masterclass and a stack of tool and resources to help you make smarter financial decisions. If you have a mortgage, I'll teach you how to pay it off up to 3 times faster. Not me, that will be Tim. If you are paying too much tax, Tim can teach you how to save thousands each year. And if you are someone who's committed to being financially free, then Tim can show you how he bought 13 properties by the age of 27. So head over to infinitewealth.com.au/AFL Fantasy. So we will go to the results of the Content Creators Cup. I'm very, very happy. I bounced back from my loss last week to Mitch with a win over Roy, which I was very happy with. DC, unfortunately, mate, very tight clash up there. Sort of 2 top 4 coaches, mate. Just going down to Mitch. What did you make of the matchup?
Yeah, probably feel a little bit stiff. I think I got maybe the 5th or 6th highest score of the round out of the league, and to lose to Mitch is a bit rough, but he's going very well, so no shame in that.
Yeah. He was like the 2nd highest score, and yeah, as you said, your top sort of few. So I definitely know how that's what that is like. A few of the other results from the weekend. Warney defeated Stato, so Warney's having a pretty good year there. John Harmey went down to Rids. Jepper got the better of Holmesy. Holmesy had a really tough week. So hopefully, I'm sure he'll be bouncing back. He's had a cracking start to the year. Luke got a win over Jake, so Luke's also having a pretty good year. Nathan got a win over Sanch, so the HatChat battle there, and Nathan, I think that was the 2nd win for the season, so he'll be happy with that one there. Louis went down to Tim. Tim with I think he got the 3rd highest score for the round out of everyone with an 1883. So Tim went very well. Calvin went down to Hef. Mitch, obviously, as we said before, beat DC, and Mini Monk got a tight one over MJ. Obviously, both of them are having tough weeks, but their teams are very similar. So Mini Monk just getting the job done. So Mini Monk stays undefeated, and then we do have we still have four coaches inside the top 1,000. With Mitch is now top, ranked 195th. DC is second in the overall rankings at 285th. Roy is 607th, and Rids is 977th overall. So congrats those coaches for continuing on their good path. But we will move across to the games. So the first game was St Kilda defeating the Bulldogs by 60 points at Marvel Stadium. The only injury in this game was Butler with a right hamstring injury. The subs, Riley Sanders, Bevo, doing Bevo things on a Thursday night, naming Sanders a sub, which I'm sure plenty of people did pivot off of their trades and traded him out on the Thursday night. But a few of the scorers here, Bailey Dale, 160 was massive. Shout out to those people that got him in draft after that subbing a few weeks ago. Adam Treloar, 137, continues on his great season there. Marcus Windhager, 105. Jake was very happy. I know he was telling me that on Friday, looping him from the bench and getting that 105 there. Jack Steele, 87. Jack Sinclair, 64. Nasai Wanganeen-Miller, 63. And Marshall, 62, all going unders. And most of us had a VC out of those guys, so we had to pivot away from them. But going a few games, a few posts in this game, DT Lemon. So Jack McRae, he's back. 129. He's back in the fantasy conversations. What are your thoughts on Jack McRae as an option? Because he didn't actually have Libba's role with Libba being out. It actually went to Ed Richards, and McRae had the sort of the role that he's been playing for a while. So is he a guy that you're going to be considering?
Yeah, I think every coach will need to consider Jack McRae this week. We've been crying out for a decent premium forward option. I think a lot of coaches probably need to get one this week, and that role I think was a tick. He wasn't in the CBAs, but he was in around the contest, and that's the main thing. We know he can tackle, he can spread. I think he looked pretty good from what I saw of it. And the Dogs looked back. They were chipping the ball around, they were sharing it. They looked like they were really on. So yeah, he's probably got to be in everyone's plans this week or the next week. And if you think he can keep it up, I don't think he's going to go 130 every week, but in that role, he could easily go 90, 95, which makes him a top 6 forward. So,
yeah. DC, your thoughts on Jack McRae?
Yeah, pretty similar. I think the key thing that people need to remember is his price point. There's obviously going to be a fair bit of frustration that sort of seeped over from last season, where a lot of people started him. He was priced over 100 and was pretty disappointing. Sort of got pushed out of that main midfield rotation. But given the fact he's been sub and started a bit slowly this year, he's now priced, I think, in the low 80s. And we've got a guy here who's obviously in the past shown that he's a fantasy beast on his day. And I think even in that role, he probably can average 90, which will put him in the conversation as a top 6 forward. So when you've got a potential top 6 in any line or top 8 in any line that you can get at value, you should be looking at that.
Yeah, he's got a pretty good run as well. He's got Freo this week, then I think goes into Hawthorn and Richmond. So are you happy to jump on this week, DC, or do you want to see another week from him before really sort of looking at him to bring into your side?
Yeah, no, I think you're probably okay to jump on this week. I would say the Saints were really poor, would be the only factor. He's obviously not going to go 120 every week, but as I said, I think his the fact that he hits every stat line, he's going to play enough around the ball that he should have a reasonably decent floor, and he's obviously shown the capacity this week to hit those ceiling scores, which we haven't really seen a lot of forwards do this year.
Yeah, exactly. He's going to be once on my list as well. And Gio Garcia is another one I think we've got to keep on our probably going to be the rookie downgrade of the week with a 71. Looked pretty good. One of the only Saints players that probably looked up to it on the weekend, or on Thursday night. So he'll be a popular trade in this week. Moving on to the second game, Adelaide defeating Essendon by 3 points. Adelaide over, which very depressing night for me. But it was eased by a certain captain of the Adelaide Football Club. But the subs didn't really impact the game. Sam Berry was subbed out in the third quarter, but sort of everyone's role was sort of solidified before that. But a few of the scores. So obviously Jordan Dawson, DC 155. Obviously spoke about him before, but any concerns with you moving forward still with Crouch to come back in? Or do you think he was that good that surely the Crows are going to look at that and go, he's the captain, got to keep him in the midfield?
Yeah, it's a tricky one. There's a lot of factors at play here, I think. And I think particularly with last week's game where he got that 60, he didn't play well in the first half. He played most of the first half in the midfield. The second half, we had Gallant got subbed out. He obviously wasn't having an impact as a midfielder, so they moved him forward. I think when he plays as well as that, they're not going to move him out of the midfield. Part of his problem this year is he hasn't really played as well as he did last season, and that's a pretty high bar. But this was probably the first game where he really looked back to his dominant self. But obviously, they've got a lot of mouths to feed there, and it may be a situation of horses for courses a little bit from week to week. So he may have times where he goes forward or sits back or out in a wing or something. But I think when he plays like that, you've got to have a certain amount of confidence because he was dominant, and it was basically him and Saligo were trying to drag the Crows across the line.
Yeah, it's crazy to think as well, Dawson, after that poor score, is still averaging more than a few of the popular picks. So he's averaging more than a Tom Green, a Zach Butters, Connor Rosie, Andrew Brayshaw, Bont, Goulden. I know obviously Dawson was priced up high, but it is good to see that he's sort of back on track and hopefully is good moving forward. A few other players in the game here. Nick Martin had a big last quarter there to score 109. I think kicked the winning goal. I'm pretty sure that was a goal to put Eston up, and I don't think the Crows obviously got the goal back. So I think Martin kicked the winning goal there. Zach Merritt, 103, for some reason moved out of the midfield in the second half. I think he only had a couple of CBAs in the second half, which was a bit interesting. But we'll talk about another player that was sort of the beneficiary of that there. Darcy Parish got an 86. He's going to get very, very cheap, so probably just still keep an eye on him. But we're not looking at him at the moment. He's not looking quite up to it at the moment. Roy Laird, 83, probably someone to note for maybe forward status in round 12 because he's playing a lot of forward time, which I thought he'd be playing half back. But they seem like him up forward. So, yeah, potential forward status in round 12 and ranking with only the 62 in this game. Did actually save that a bit late as well with a few scores there. But Jai Caldwell, Lemon, had a good game, 117. Obviously, there's talk about the Eston injuries and people coming back in. But as a forward, he's played that well. Do you think that he's going to keep this role or do you suspect he might keep some of that role for 1 and 2? Is he an option for us to look at in our forward lines?
Yeah, I think Caldwell's a player that's probably got under the radar a little bit. You know, this is his third ton in a row. He's a good tackler. He's a good marker. So he sort of fills the stat sheet. And I think we've all looked at him in the past. You know, we think he's a bit of a fantasy player. So we probably do need to look at Caldwell. Maybe he's another option if you not sure about McRae just yet. Because yeah, a guy who's in the forward line who can go 3 tons in a row, clearly has a bit of midfield time, and he tackles. that's if he's getting 5, 6 plus tackles every week, there's going to be a nice little floor there. I think we've probably been sleeping on Caldwell this year.
If you're looking at Caldwell or McRae, do you lean one way or the other?
I'm not sure what the price difference will be. I think McRae might be maybe 100k cheaper or something after this week. So
I don't think it'll be quite that much, but I think it will be cheaper.
Yeah,
so I've actually just got the prices here because Lockout actually has lifted as we're recording. So McRae's 715 and Caldwell's 757.
Okay, yeah. So a little bit of it's tricky because again we're sort of forecasting what the role's going to be for the rest of the year. We know what Bevo does. Does Caldwell get pushed out when Essendon get all their guys back? I'm not sure. I'd probably look back at the tape of Caldwell and see if he's played that role well enough to keep his spot for the whole year. Because these guys at this price, you don't really want to be trading them out in 5-6 weeks. You want to be holding them for at least 10 weeks, probably.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, definitely one to be considering there. Final player I want to touch on DC was Jake Saligo. So 98. Looked good last 3 weeks. The lowest score last week is 73, but still had plenty of midfield, got plenty of the ball. Price at 638, break even 46 and got north this week. For those coaches maybe that can't get up to one of those forward guys like a McRae and you sort of either double downgrade or get Saligo, is Saligo a guy that you could look at in your team?
Possibly. He's playing really well. My concern is that he's playing really well and not putting up massive fantasy scores. So even the week that he got the 70 odd, I thought he was very good. And this week, particularly in the first half, he was the best player on the ground, maybe besides Dawson. And 31 touches and a goal and hits a 98. You kind of, if you get a player getting 31 touches and a goal, you'd hope they're hitting 110, 120. And part of that's because he's got just the 3 tackles, 3 marks. So you really want your midfielders, I think, to be hitting those other two stat lines a bit more often than what he seems to do. But I think a few weeks ago he did have 8 tackles or something. So maybe he can, but I probably haven't seen enough yet to suggest that he's going to be a guy that can average sort of 95, 100 at that price point. I think he's still going to drop these 70s and 80s a bit, which is probably going to cap his upside.
Yeah, I think I agree as well. So I was actually talking to that with Jake at the game, saying that he's played so well, but he only finished on 98. So yeah, someone to maybe look at, but yeah, I don't know if he's got that upside there. But we'll move on to the next game. Collingwood defeating Port Adelaide by 42 points at the MCG. So the injury from this game, Horn Francis did a hamstring, so I don't know the extent of that injury, but I'm sure we'll hear about that soon. But normally hamstrings are typically going to be missing at least a week or two. But subs again didn't really impact it. Obviously, Craig McRae probably looking for the occasion, subbing out Pendles on 9,996 disposals, maybe looking to get his 10,000th on Anzac Day. But really only 3 players probably to touch on here in terms of fantasy. Zach Butters, 117, was massive in that first quarter with 61 points. But sort of after that, sort of second, third quarter a bit quiet. Last quarter was pretty good. So, but you'd be taking that. I know a few people went him as captain, so you'd be happy with that score. Nick Dacos, Lemon, 95. Obviously, we've been talking about Dacos from the start of the season. This is about the time we were looking to bring him in to our teams. Is he someone that you're going to be looking at targeting? Obviously, with the little flag, maybe these could have some attention from maybe a Durham and a George Hewitt over the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, I think definitely. I love targeting underpriced guys who I think can be top of the line, and I think everyone. There's not much doubt that he's going to be a top 6 defender. So. Definitely, this week you probably could go. You could also wait a week, maybe depending on how that break even is, and if you want to pull that trade before Anzac Day. But yeah, I think you've got to consider him. It's a tough matchup, and he's put up a 95. I wouldn't be scared off.
Yep, he's 886 with a 124 break even. DC, are you looking at Nick Dacos this week?
Whether it's this week or in the next few weeks, absolutely yes. Everyone should be looking at him if you don't have him. Particularly if his price keeps dropping and he has a lower game this week, you've really got to get him if he's getting down towards 850 or something like that. I would say that he probably saved his score a little bit in the last quarter of the game. He had 36 in the last quarter and 11 touches. And up until then, he was reasonably quiet. So I do think we haven't seen the best of him this year, apart from maybe 1 or 2 games in the first few rounds. And I guess kind of similar to Sligo that we were just talking about, he's another guy that relies a lot on disposals to get a score. He averaged under 4 marks and 4 tackles a game last year, but made up with it with just massive weight of disposals. But it has shown this year when he has less of the ball, he can't sustain his scoring with tackles or marks. So that's my minor concern with him going forward, is just whether he's going to hurt other people if you own him or hurt you if you don't own him, particularly when he's having these slightly quieter games. Say slightly quieter, he still had 30 disposals.
Yeah, exactly. I was actually talking to my mate about Dacos, and it seems since he's been playing the midfield, he's actually handballing a lot more, which is obviously off half back. He was kicking it, the extra point, you have an extra 10 points. That's a difference of 110 compared to 100. So maybe he is closer to 105 with the midfield time there. But I'm targeting him, I guess. I think we've probably got to have him before round 9. I think he's got West Coast at Marvel, and that could be a pretty good score.
Premiership favourites, West Coast.
Yeah, exactly. We will talk about them, DC. Don't you worry. There was a certain player that, I got out of my chair even watching that game. Connor Rozee with a 70 as well. Poor game from him. I'm sure he'll respond, so do not worry about that. All premiums at the start of the year have pretty much dropped 1 or 2 bad scores, and this is his only bad score for the year. So keep rolling with him. Moving to the Twilight game, a good game this one. Carlton defeating GWS by 19 points at Marvel Stadium. The big one coming out of this, Zach Williams with an Achilles knock, not an Achilles injury. I don't know how bad it is. It seems like it was more precautionary and a bit of a chance to rest him, but I don't know the extent of that. And Wiedering also had a pretty badly caught quad there. As we said, Williams got subbed out at halftime on 28. And we will start off with Zach Williams, Lemon. For all those coaches out there, I guess if you've got Tom Stewart, depending on what's happened with Hayden Young, obviously Massimo got subbed out as well. There's a few bullets there. Is Williams a guy that if he plays this week, could you hold? Or do you think with that probably higher break even, I'll just get his break even actually up now. So his break even now is up to 76. Is he could be potentially a hold, or is he a trade for you?
I think you could hold him, but I'd definitely be looking to trade because I think he's pretty much reached the sort of what he's averaging. He's roughly priced at that. There may be a little bit more meat on the bone if you can hold him through this next couple of weeks, but these mid prices are guys that I love to get off this time of year because they've got a lot of cash on their head. But also, you look at the defender rookies; they're probably scoring just as well as Zach Williams, maybe more better at the moment. So for me, I'd rather have Closey on field than Zach Williams hogging that spot. I'd definitely be happy to trade him if you're an owner. He's done his job. Move him on.
Yeah, is there a play with Gold Coast playing West Coast this week? Is there a play where you could maybe even bench Zach Williams if you've got other issues for the weekend play? A Will Graham or a Closey on field?
Yep, yeah, definitely. I think so. I did that last week. I benched him, and I think Closey beat him by 2 points or something. So just because he's got a bit more cash on his head doesn't mean he needs to start on field. You can definitely bench him this week. If he's not playing, you can use him as a loophole. I don't know when they play their game this week, but that's the other thing to consider. Some of these guys now that we're best 22, you might actually want a loophole or two just so you can play around with the bench scores. So you can definitely take a look at that.
Yeah. A few other scores in this game as well. Tom Green got to the 100 as well. I thought he played really well in the second half, but sort of only just got straight to the 100 there. But I guess owners are just happy got that 100 after a couple of poor weeks there. Lockie Whitfield, the 93. Sort of went quiet late in that game, but he was pretty good early for the Giants. I think his third quarter particularly was the quiet one there. Cadman and Thomas with 59 and 45 respectively, just sort of ticking over that cash gen. But DC, Sam Walsh, 101. What did you make of his game? I think his marks have been quite low to start the year. Is this something that is a bit of a trend? Because I think it sort of started sort of a little bit towards the back end of last year. So is that probably your worry with Walsh, and is he still an option to bring in?
Yeah, it's becoming a theme of the players I'm talking about here. But yeah, I think it's kind of similar to Dacos. He was very good. But yeah, no marks, 4 tackles, whereas the week before, I think he had the 13 or 14 or whatever it was. So that was probably the difference between his score this week and the score last week. Only had the 2 marks last week as well. He's never really been a massive marks guy. But we obviously want to see a little bit more than that from him. We don't want him to get 35 disposals and just trickle over the ton. So it'll definitely be something I'm looking at, but the Giants also aren't the easiest matchup. So I'm hoping he goes a little bit better in those other stat lines in the next few weeks.
Yeah, I think he's got Geelong and Collingwood in his next 2. So a little bit easier matchups there and could go quite well at the MCG for both of those. Moving on to the Saturday night game. So Brisbane defeating Geelong by 26 points. Defeated by Geelong, by 26 points at the Gabba. A couple of injuries here, concussions to both Oscar McInerney and Tom Stewart. I think DC can see the future with a bit of a trade there. Do you want to let the people know what you do with your trades, DC?
Yeah, people really hate it when you get lucky. Apparently, people are fine with it when you make smart moves and are tactically astute. But if you get lucky, you're going to hear about it, and that's basically what happened to me this week. I worked out I had effectively too many defenders and wanted to move one of them out, and Tom Stewart was the one that I wanted to keep least, having only brought him in a few weeks ago. So he went to Sam Walsh for me, and I guess you could say I was pretty kissed on that one.
Yeah, in terms of your own team, I think it was a good trade, mate. With a few of the subs there, so Tom Stewart, obviously, and Oscar Manning subbed out for Jared Lyons, and Jai Clark came on with 25. The one beef I had with that last night, why is Chris Scott bringing him off for like 5 minutes ago and not resting? Another part of the game's over. I didn't understand that. But anyway, we'll move on to some of the scores here. So Josh Dunkley, wasn't a high-scoring game, but Dunkley got to a 90. If you did jump on this week, you probably were hoping for a bit more, and he would have been another captain option that didn't go particularly well this week. Toby Conway, the 77, was pretty good. I know a couple of people jumped on him to cover Max Gorn this week. So 77, you'd be pretty happy with that, making a bit of cash there, but he's probably going to be out of the side for Stanley this week, is what Geelong normally do. Lockie Neal, just a guy to keep an eye on, got tagged by Connor to a 75. He's getting very, very cheap. So he will be a guy we might maybe bring into our sides in a couple of weeks' time when we see something happen. Kyle Lohman, 49. Bit of a quiet game, but obviously with the conditions didn't suit. And Jai Clark also got subbed on for the 25. And then Stewart was subbed out on the 47. Dane Zorko, DC, 127, just keeps getting it done. He's scored 100 in every game this year, looking looking great. He is expensive now. I believe he will be over 900K now this week. Can we still do it? Or do you think that with the emergence of like the McRaes and Caldwells and guys like that, would you be probably targeting them? Yeah, like Zorko, 908K.
Yeah, I mean, props to everyone that's brought him in over the first 6 weeks or so. It's just one that personally I haven't even considered because I didn't see the risk I didn't see the reward outweighing the risk. And I'm probably wrong on that because he scored exceptionally well. But I still think at some point he is going to either get rested in game or have a week's rest or have an injury, something along those lines. You're not going to get 23 full games out of a 35-year-old, regardless of what role he's playing, particularly with his injury history. So that's still my concern with Zorko. It's probably in hindsight, given the fact we've had best 18, it was less of an issue than maybe what we've spoken about. We now have got 5 weeks in a row of best 22. And as you said, we've got a couple of other forward options that are putting their hands up that are about 200K cheaper. So that's definitely where I'll be looking.
Yeah. Is it maybe a case where you get to the mid-season bye, he's got the round 12 bye, if he's still doing this up until round 12 and looking good, is that something you'd look at maybe post that bye in round 12?
Yeah, possibly. It's another point, though, as well, is that I think most teams will have a lot of round 12 players. So do you really want to be bringing in another round 12 bye, particularly in the forward line? Because I think most teams will have Heaney and Tom Powell. So you then bring in a third premium forward that you're going to want to keep.
Yeah, exactly. No, very good point there. And Ollie Dempsey, Lemon, 54. Conditions not suiting, but I guess 54 is still probably respectable enough score from rookie. Probably wouldn't have counted. Well, might have counted for some people, depending on how much carnage they cop. I guess with the Bullets this week, is Ollie Dempsey a guy that you're still happy to be riding there at F5, F6?
Yeah, I think he's still shown that he can score quite well compared to some of the other rookies. I think, a bit of a tougher matchup, and I think he kicks zero goals too as well. So, some of these small forwards, if they kick 1 or 2 goals, boost their score, they can have a good day. So same with like a Lohman as well. If anyone's got Lohman, I think he's a better scorer than the 49 that he put out. So, I think you can still hold these guys and you can still put them on field with a bit of confidence.
Yeah, and I believe he's actually the only player on the ground that didn't take a mark. So with the fact he didn't kick any goals and didn't take any marks, I think the upside's there. And he's got back-to-back games at the MCG against Carlton and Melbourne. So wide open spaces as a guy that plays on a wing / high half forward could put up a couple of decent enough scores. So I agree. I think he is a hold as well. Moving to the other Saturday night game, which DC was up and about for, it was West Coast defeating Fremantle by 37 points at Optus Stadium. The only injury from this game was, Jai Amos with a concussion. Hayden Young was not listed on the injury report post the game, so whether that's a positive is to be seen. I guess we'll just have to see how Hayden Young does pull up from this game here. Subs didn't really impact the game, so I won't worry about going through them. But in terms of the scores, Caleb Sarong 107 was pretty good, but quieter in the second half. But I guess if you had him captain, you'd probably take anything over 100 this week, I think, to be honest, from your captain. Jordan Clark continued his 95 to 99 scoring with another 96. I thought 100% he was going to pass it this week, but he just didn't get there, didn't get to the 100 mark. So I think you're still pretty happy with those scores. Andrew Brayshaw, 93, just not hitting those same heights as what he has done in previous years. Elliot Yeo and Hayden Young both scoring 88 there. Yeo particularly looked very, very good as well. Nat Fyfe, if you've still got him, 82 was a decent score from him there as well. Jeremy Sharp with 74 was also good in a Freo loss. Luke Ryan was poor with 63 as well. But I guess we'll probably touch on a couple of players. So DC, being the West Coast man, Harley Reid, I definitely got out of my chair.
Never heard of him.
Those two marks that he took. He's getting better every week. I think that's the thing, and I think you can probably agree. I think we're probably going to be riding him at F6 until his bye. So I just want to sort of talk about Harley Reid.
Yeah, maybe not to his bye, but certainly for the time being. I mean, I think he's put up maybe 3 79s or 80s in a row now, or around about that high 70, low 80s score, which is fantastic as a rookie. So there has been a slight shift in his role as well. They've clearly thrown him more into the guts over the last 3 weeks, and have basically just said, well, you're going to be there long term anyway. You may as well start doing it now. And he's been excellent in there alongside Elliot Yeo. They're very similar in some ways. Reed's got a lot more pace, but they're both very tough in the contest and hard to tackle. And yeah, he's been outstanding and brilliant in the air as well, that as he showed this week. So he's not going to get 80 every week, but I feel pretty confident that he's going to have a reasonably high floor for a rookie in that role.
Yeah, he's now up at 498k, and I think people are probably worried, but he did have a pretty sort of hard first 4 games, like Port Adelaide, Adelaide Oval, Giants at Optus, Western Bulldogs at Marvel, and then Sydney in the Adelaide Hills. So those 4 are not sort of easy teams to score against, and he did well against Sydney and was solid enough, I guess, the first few weeks. But now his run starts to open up with a few easier teams. So yeah, I agree. I think he's going very, very nicely.
I'd also say that the way the Eagles are playing is going to suit him. They've all the wording out of Adam Simpson this season has been that they want to get better at contest, and that's where we were deplorable last year, and that's what we did against Freo, was just trying to turn it into a scrap, and we belted them up around the ball, to be honest. So I guess a pretty good midfield. So if that's going to be the way they want to keep playing games, it's going to suit Harley Reid down to the ground.
Yeah, no, he's an absolute jet. Lemon, Luke Jackson, 61. Coaches were hoping for one more good score against West Coast, even with Darcy back, but unfortunately that was not the case. Is he where does he sort of list on terms of priority trade outs for you, sort of in a weaker forward line? Is he one of the sort of top ones, or do you think with a few bullets, do you think maybe you could slide him potentially down the list a bit?
Yeah, it's a tricky one for Jackson owners. I think that's sort of why I avoided at the start of the year, because Darcy's come back now, and right when we want to start upgrading rookies and get ready for best 22, you're sort of sideways trading a primo. So I think we know what he does with Darcy in the team, just like we know what he does without Darcy in the team. And I'm expecting, in the next couple of weeks, maybe a 75 average, maybe an 80 average. I don't think he'll go much more than that week to week with Darcy in the team, because he's just going to be playing forward. We know how good a ruck Darcy is, so it's a tricky one. I think you can still hold him if you've got bigger priorities, because he can put up a good game. Darcy's not exactly the most durable guy, so there's a chance he gets re-injured or something else pops up. But it's definitely a tricky one, because we saw with Harley Reid at the moment, they're rookies that could score 70, 80. You don't really want that from a guy like Luke Jackson. So tricky one, but you've had 5 good weeks out of him, and then this one. So it's probably, if you can get out, it's probably not the worst thing.
Yeah. Went down to 30k this week with a 121 break even. So yeah, could be something where you maybe go him down and a little bit to a McRae or whatever, and maybe you might be able to get something on the other end there. So maybe have a look at your team and see if you can move him out. But as we turn our attention to these Sunday games, reminder, if you are joining us live on Twitter or YouTube, let us know your questions by commenting in the live chats on YouTube and Twitter. And we'll get to answering a few of those when we finish these 2 games. But Sydney defeating Gold Coast by 53 points at the SCG. No injuries to speak of from this game, and even the subs weren't even too impactful from this game. So Brodie Grundy, 142. If you did have him and you're holding him past his bye, you'd be very, very happy with that massive score from him. Stan Flanders continued on his good form with 126. A few turnovers today, but still racked it up. And he was a great trade if you've got him in the last couple of weeks. Isaac Heaney continued on his good form with 113, has scored over 110, I think, in every game, or I think got it maybe a 108 or 107. So he scored over 105 in every game. Toot Miller with 100 as well. Matt Roberts, 89. Lemon with Matt Roberts, 89 is another great score. Is he just a guy that would just, I guess with DPP as well, we're just holding him through to his round 12 bye now?
Yeah, I think you just hold him, play him on field, and just keep riding this. He looks incredible. He looked good in the preseason, and he's got a great role, and he just makes good decisions. They look to give him the ball, like he's taking kickouts ahead of Blakey, which is crazy. So yeah, I think you just ride it. You flip him between your defense and your midfield wherever you need him. And then, maybe you trade it at his bye. Maybe he's a guy that you hold through your buys, just give you a bit of flexibility and a number on field. But I think you're not looking to trade him out anytime soon.
Yeah, so if from the 9 kick-ins today, Florent and Roberts had 4 apiece, and then Blakey only had the 1. So Good to see Matty Roberts getting some kick-ins there. And then also for people wanting to know Heaney CBAs, Heaney had the most CBAs from the game. So from the game, there were, I believe, 227, and Heaney had 20 of them, and he was number one and row bottom at 2 with 17, then just a host of players after that. So good to see that role sticky, but Parker should be back this week, so something to keep an eye on with him there. A few other players this game, Taylor Adams got an 83, so I guess someone to keep an eye on. Maybe with a lot of those round 12 bye players, maybe he's a guy we look at past his bye when we get sort of a bit of a sample size from him, but he was pretty solid today. Jack Lukosius with an 80 as well was a solid score as well. Sam Closey with a 73 and Will Graham with a 50, so solid enough scores from them. And Noah Anderson had a poor game after a big one last week, only scoring 69 points today. The other one I want to speak about as well, DC, Errol Goulden scored 100. I think he was, again, another player that got lucky to get to that score. I think he was on 30 points. I know he was at 30 points at halftime because he was my captain and I was stressing at halftime, but he had a good sort of last quarter and sort of second half in general. Is he someone that you're going to be looking at? I guess we probably don't have a lot of round 12 midfield buy players. So is he someone that you're going to look at? He probably bottomed out in price now, like his break evens now up at, down to, it's 113. He's got Hawthorn this week at the MCG, and Hawks haven't really looked like tagging too much lately. So is he someone that's on your radar?
Yeah, he was on my radar this week, and it ended up going Walsh, but he was one of probably 4 or 5 players that I was looking at. But yeah, totally agree. He had 42 points in the last quarter. So he was 58 at 3/4 time. It's not what you want from a guy. I think this week coming in was priced at about 106, 107. And we know how good he was last year. Kind of similar to Dacos, just hasn't really hit the heights that he hit last year, aside from maybe a game or two. So I think he's a reasonable option, but that round 12 bye does make it tricky, I guess, for those similar reasons. Although I would say that there's less round 12 midfielders, I think, that people are keen on. Maybe it's Tom Green would be the most
Josh
popular
Dunkley,
one.
A couple of those guys.
Yeah,
maybe a Lockie Neal if people look at bringing him in.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think too many people have got the Lions boys there, so it's probably just Green, to be honest. So if you don't have Green, you can maybe go Dunkley, but I'd probably over the next few weeks start trying to balance out those buy rounds a little bit and just make sure you're not too heavy before you jump on someone like Goulden.
Yeah, the one thing I noticed in Goulden today as well is that he got burnt so much. Like players didn't sort of look to go to him as much, which is interesting. Sydney played. I noticed that Sydney played a lot quicker today than one. I know they've been playing quick through the middle, but it seemed like they were going even quicker today. But something to note, I think, with Goulden moving forward. But he was okay nonetheless. Moving on to the final game, which was North Melbourne defeated by Hawthorn by 45 points there. I'm just getting the injuries up because I didn't have time to put this in the notes. It was only Eddie Full with a hip. That didn't really concern any fantasy coaches. And the only sub that really concerned us was Massimo being subbed out in the third quarter, which, thanks, Sam Mitchell. Unbelievable. Going to the players here, Tristan Sherry, massive score, 126. I mentioned him before, his tackling pressure, had 10 tackles today, and he looked fantastic. So, if you still got him, we're definitely going to be holding him. Harry Sheezer, 106, had a massive first quarter, 44 points, but didn't really seem to get a tag as such. Just didn't, I guess, get used as much. I don't know if you boys noticed too much attention as well, but I didn't sort of notice anything. DC, did you notice anything?
No, definitely in the first quarter, he wasn't being tagged. The second quarter, I just think the Roos couldn't get their hands on the ball. And then the second half, he was solid enough, but not spectacular. So, a lot of people obviously had him captain this week, and at quarter time was like, why did I not just captain Sheasel? And so I went and did something else for a quarter or so and then came back, and I think he was only on 57 or something. So, bit of an odd game, quite similar to Butters' game actually earlier in the round where he went massive in the first quarter and then was reasonably quiet.
Yeah, I think Sarong did that as well. Massive first quarter and went pretty quiet. So it's sort of like the same, just the round, I think, was just a very odd round in general. John Newcomb, 103. I feel sorry for every one of those owners that have traded him out the last couple of weeks. DC, does Urban still have John Newcomb in his side?
I actually don't know. I can't remember. I think, I can't remember whether he traded him out last week or not. So, still, it's North Melbourne, and they were deplorable again as well. I actually tipped North Melbourne in this game, and couldn't believe how much the Hawks beat him by, because the Hawks looked awful last week against the Suns. So, I wouldn't be getting too excited if you're a Newcomb owner.
Yeah, exactly. Dylan Moore, 96, 4 goals to get that. So I don't think we're looking at him at the moment. Carl Aylmer, only 84 as well. Only had 14 touches in this game, which was surprising seeing how well Hawthorn played. Tom Power, 82, just getting to a solid enough score for us there to tick it over. LDU with a 78 was a poor score from him there. James Sicily, I've said it for a few weeks, until Hawthorn bring in another key defender, we just can't look at him. Another poor score with only 66. McCurchy with a 64. He was playing sort of all over the ground. The sort of role wasn't sort of set. So I guess he's probably not a huge issue for you, but you could always downgrade him if that gets you your upgrade on the top. Lemon, Zach Fisher, 60. What are your thoughts on him? He's just been hovering between, 60 and 80 in every game. Is he a guy that you're just holding to his round 12 bye, then you might move him on there, or could you move him on potentially as early as this week?
I think we've seen enough from Fisher now. We know that, Sheasel takes a lot of ball back there. They like Bailey Scott getting the ball in his hands. Even like Luke McDonald's back now. They've got a few other guys who can use the ball. So I think he looks really good when he gets it, but he's just not getting that volume that we were expecting. So I think his price is pretty much stalling. Unless he pops a big game, he's not really going to start making much cash. So I'd be happy to trade him this week or any time up to his buy. You can just hold him. He looks like he's best 22 in that North Melbourne team. You can hold him if you have to. He probably won't drop too much, but yeah, it's a bit of a failed pick, that one.
Yeah. No, I think he could potentially go if it does suit your side there. Blake Drury, only the 44 points. So if you did move on to him, that was the flag, I guess, with him this week. And same, I think, with Biggie Nguyen with a 47. But Biggie Nguyen probably went better in the second half. Had a bit of a knee sort of niggle in that first half there. So he got to a 47 and make some cash there as well. And sort of a few other rookies like Comben moved forward as well. Only scored the 35. Lazaro was a sub that came on, only 35. Dersmer only the 22 as well. Huswaite was a sub. Massimo with a 33. Don't have to ask you boys. I think it is just a trade. I think his break even's up at 96 now. So he's got to be, I think, a priority to trade out, and he'll start losing cash. So, yep, he's got to go. Beautiful. Well, we will move over to some of the questions that listeners are putting in for the last sort of 10 minutes or so. So if you are tuning in live, send your questions through on YouTube and Twitter, and we'll get to answering some of these now. So, Kyle's got the first one, Lemon. So he said, thoughts on Hayden Young. So does this just come down to if he plays, you hold or whatever? Or is there a case that, I don't know, could you trade him even if he does play with the niggle there?
No, I think if he plays, you definitely hold. And I think if he misses 1 week or even probably 2 weeks, I'd hold him at this point. There's heaps of other guys that are bleeding cash. We've got good defender rookies that can cover him. So if he was a 2-weeker, I'd probably still hold him at this point and just use him for a loophole for the next 2 weeks.
Yeah, I agree. What do we got here? So Thubi Outhouse, I've got that correct. Apologies if I butchered that. DC's got the question for you. Who do I trade D'Ambrosio, Zach Williams? Who do I trade out of D'Ambrosio, Zach Williams, and Riley Sanders? So which sort of rank in terms of order of preference of trade outs?
Obviously the key factors there is going to be how long Williams is out for, or if he's out at all. I would probably still trade Massimo, though, to be honest. I actually think he's quite close to being dropped. It probably helped that they had a good win this week. They may not swing too many changes, but I just don't think he's had any impact on any of the games over the last 3 or 4 weeks personally. So, and even those couple of weeks at the start of the season where he got the 90 scores, a lot of that was a lot of cheap disposal. So I'd be a little bit concerned if I was an owner.
Yep. Massimo's been a very, very tough watch as well. So Corey Butler just got this one. Lemon, he said Williams and Fisher. Oh no, that's the same one. Sorry, just Williams and Fisher have to go this week. Brisbane Bloods fantasy. So Lemon, what's your so Caldwell? Is it too late to bring him in?
It's not too late. I think he's still priced around that sort of 90 area maybe. So that's what you're paying for. If he's shown in that midfield role, he can do, hundreds against pretty good teams. So the real question is, does he keep the midfield role and what's going to change in that Essendon midfield? But they've been playing pretty well the last 2 weeks. And against Port 3 weeks ago, he was probably one of the better players in a pretty poor performance. So you could consider him, but it's very tough to read what's going to happen with that midfield in the future.
Yeah. Also, just before we answer another question, we do have the DPPs have dropped in there, are in the app now, but just some players of note that have added some different positions. So Jack Crisp has added defender status. Nick Martin, no surprises, he's added defender status there. Aish has also added defender status alongside the other players have added defender status. So you've also got a Tom Atkins, good for draft. Max Holmes, for those coaches who got him. Alex Sexton, even though we don't have him in our sides anymore. And Jack Lukosius as well has now got that defender forward flexibility, along with Carl Amon has also added it there. Charlie Comben has added defender status as well, along with Colby McKercher, Zach Fisher, Riley Bonner, Matt Roberts. In terms of players have added mid status, you've got I guess Pat Lipinski's good for draft, same with an Archie Perkins there. Hayden Young, Ollie Dempsey, Sam Closey, Masamobi's probably going to be traded by a lot this week. Jack Billings, Salem obviously is injured. Tom Powell and Isaac Heaney, and even Harvey Gallagher as well, which is good for flexibility there. And then players have added forward status. So you've got Elijah Hollins has added forward status along with Matt Kennedy. Matt Kennedy could be someone that could be of interest there. Ben Hobbs has added forward status there. Along with Josh Simpkin. Josh Simpkin could be someone if he starts putting up some better numbers there. But I guess the big one we're all waiting for is Riley Sanders did add forward status as well. So if you've got him there, he will be now available into your forward lines. So Sean's got this question, DC. So he said, do players with high break evens like Massimo, Luke Jackson, and McKercher, do they go before Zach Williams if he's out this week?
Again, it would depend on the injury. And if we think he's going to miss multiple weeks, I think they're all fine to trade. How you go about prioritising them is the tricky part there. I actually held McKercher this week in the end and traded Jai Clark instead because it didn't affect my other trade at all. So I think he'd probably be the one I'd hold because I think he's the cheapest and he's most likely to get that cash gen going again. So, yeah, for me, as I said before, Massimo, I'm a bit nervous about whether he's going to hold his spot going forward. And if Williams is fine this week, I think you could probably hold him there. And then Jackson, yeah, it's a tricky one because you obviously don't want him to lose too much cash, but I also wouldn't read a huge amount into that game because Freo were poor and he certainly didn't have any impact on the game, but we know that he's a very good player. So I'd probably think about keeping him with the lack of other options we've got in the forward line if you've got those other issues.
Yep, agree with that one there. Nathan's got this question, Lemon. So he still doesn't have Heaney. He actually moved up from 910 overall to 892nd overall. So good stuff, Nathan, mate. Good to see you on Wednesday night. Is it too late for Heaney? He wants to know, what do you reckon, Lemon, about bringing Heaney in?
Yeah, I mean, the problem with Heaney, if you get Heaney at the moment, you're getting what you pay for. So there's no value there. If you're just playing for a league win, bringing in a guy like that who we think is going to be a top six forward, there's nothing wrong with it. But this time of year, I think we're seeing, blokes like McRae, Caldwell. There are some other options in the forward line that might score just as well as Heaney over the next month, but they're 150, 200K cheaper. I'd rather look in that area and try and find value even with your primo picks. So he's not going to get much more expensive than this for the rest of the year. He'd have to go on an absolute tear to do that. Just hope he has a quieter game, gets a tag, maybe rest forward here and there, and you can pick him up a little bit cheaper.
Yeah, and with Heaney's, he's obviously 962, 107 break even, and Parker's back potentially this week. So that is something to watch there with him as well. Miles Edwards has got this question. So, Lemon, I'll go back to you for this one because you do have Grundy. So he says, I ended up having Marshall, Gawn and Grundy in an attempt to cover the ruck buys with the plan to trade Grundy this round. Do I still go ahead and trade Grundy, or is there a potential that you move on one of the other two guys like a Marshall and play the break-even game?
I wouldn't be trading Marshall. I think that's just a bad game from him. I think he'll still be a top 2 ruckman or pretty close to it. So I wouldn't be trading Marshall. I'm in a very similar situation because I was planning on trading Grundy this week. Maybe there's a case to hold him, just ride another week's cash gen and then trade next week. It depends a bit on his break even and how much you think he's going to score this round. So you could do that maybe a week or two, just ride this 140 on the way up and then trade him for a bit more cash next week. But yeah, I wouldn't be trading Marshall. I wouldn't be trading Gawn. Grundy's the guy to go at some point.
It might also depend on what your trade options are like this week. So if you've got another trade that you can do that you really like, then maybe you can hold Grundy for another week. If you're struggling to work out what to do, then maybe cash Grundy in and maybe miss out on a little bit of cash gen the week after, but get a trade you really want.
Yeah. Damon Snell's got this question, DC. Can you jump off of Riley Bonner now with his break even at 73, looking at strengthening his forward line? So obviously the one thing I'll say with Bonner as well is that he does have Port this week, so revenge game. Then he does have two pretty nice matchups after that, and obviously with defender stats now against North and Hawthorn. So are you holding Bonner for the next few weeks, DC, until those good games, or are you happy to jump off him this week?
Probably depends a little bit on your team and what other issues you've got. He's not a high priority for me to move on personally at the moment. I think he's had that 160 in round 2, but from memory, he's hit 80 plus every other week. So he's been pretty solid. We've seen that he's got a ceiling as well when the game suits. And the Saints were poor and he actually still scored okay. So I would expect they'll respond this week. They're a better side than what they showed. And it should mean that he'll benefit from that as well.
Yeah, I'll be holding as well on that. Defender status is very handy to flick him back into defence. So Robert Cochran, I love those trades. He said, early thoughts, lads. Luke Jackson to Jack McRae, Zach Williams to Caleb Sarong. I think we'll all be ticking those trades.
Did he rob a bank?
Yeah, exactly. He must have had a lot of cash in the bank. Well, obviously, he had cash in the bank from last week. So, no, great trades there, Robert. Tony Ford Lemon, he said he's got 469K this week to upgrade. He was thinking of going Williams up to one of Heaney, Butters, Merritt or Walsh, or he could go Williams to McRae and Jai Clark to Caldwell. So I can just sort of repeat that. So Williams to Heaney, Merritt, Butters or Walsh, or go Williams to McRae and Jai Clark to Caldwell.
So it's basically we've got like one big upgrade or two small upgrades. I think this really comes down to, what are you going to do with your other trades? So if there's a rookie that you missed and you want to jump on this week, so maybe a Garcia, maybe someone else who pops up, then I like the idea of a big upgrade. Get the big points with one trade and get the cash with the other trade. But I'm in a similar position this week. I've got 400K in the bank, and I'll probably be doing two small upgrades because I've already got Garcia. I'm pretty happy with my rookies. I don't think I missed anyone, so I'll probably do two smaller upgrades rather than get a big dog in the midfield. So you can go either way. Just have a look at what you're going to do with the other trade, how your team balance is. If you've got a lot of kind of mid-price players, maybe you want to go up to that big guy with a bit more certainty. But if you're happy with your team structure and you can take a few more punts on mid-prices, like Caldwell, McRae could provide a lot of value.
Yeah, exactly. Shannon Barron's got this one here. So Clarko apparently said Sheasel in the post-match presser maybe going into the mid-forward position soon. Is this a good or a bad thing? So, well, it would be a bad thing for his scoring, but I think he'd still be a top 6 defender regardless, I think. And it might be good for Zach Fisher. So if that does happen, that'd be interesting. But it's just something to keep a note of moving forward. What do we got this one? We've got a couple more here, then we will wrap up. So Jack Wilson, DC's got these trades. He says Massimo and Riley Sanders to Elliot Yeo and Hugo Garcia. Sorry. So what are your thoughts on bringing Elliot Yeo in at this stage?
If you're playing for overall rank, I wouldn't do that because almost everyone in the top 1,000, 5,000, 10,000 ranks is going to have Elliot Yeo. Maybe not 10,000, but probably certainly in the top few thousand because he's been such a good pick. But a lot of that value is now seeped out a bit. And I'd also say that his last probably 4 games have been exceptional. And I don't think he's gone over 110. So I think we've seen probably about what he's going to do. I think he's going to be a pretty solid sort of 90 to 105 kind of guy for a lot of the year. But I'm not sure he's going to have the ceiling to really burn you from this point onwards anyway. So, I'd be looking at other options and maybe try and use your DPP this week to bring in a mid instead of a defender.
Yeah. We'll go 2 more questions here, then we'll wrap up. So Power Prawn Star Lemon's got this one. He said, I can get Dacos this week, but it's a sideways from Nasai Miller at Houston or Jordan Clark, which he's not super happy with. His alternative is either Yo to Zorko. Feels dirty, but the maths makes sense. So would you be trading any of, I guess Nasai Miller not trading, but maybe Houston, Jordan Clark, or Yo? Could any of them go to like a Dacos or Zorko? Or do you think there might be something better that you could do with your side?
Yeah, I think you said in the question, that's sideways trading. I think that's something you can do in round 21, 22. But at this point, look at your 2 trades. Can you downgrade somewhere to a guy who's going to make cash and use the cash from that downgrade to upgrade on your field? So take 2 mid prices maybe who are losing money and go one up, one down. Wouldn't be trading any of those guys. Particularly like a Houston and Jordan Clark, even if they pump out 90s, they've got a good buy. They can really help you get through those buy rounds, and then you can look to trade them in around 15, 16, 17 kind of vibes.
Yep, no, very, very good point there. And final question will go for DC's this one from JAFL MTB. So he says, I can get in any mid for Riley Sanders. Who should I be looking at? He's already got Jack Steele, Bont, and Green. So is there maybe a couple of mids, DC, that you'd be looking at from besides those 3?
I don't think there's any massive standouts necessarily, but I would be searching for a little bit of value if you can. So the guys I was looking at this week just gone were sort of around that 850 to low 900s price range. I think that's probably where you're going to get guys that can do close enough to top 8 numbers, but maybe slightly discounted. So, yeah, look in that price range and see if you can get your team upgraded a little quicker. If you start going the guys over $1 million, you're maybe going to be a round or 2 later getting your team upgraded to full premiums. So that's probably where I'd be looking.
Yeah. Beautiful. Well, that is, we'll sort of wind up now. That'll be all for the questions. But boys, thank you very much for jumping on. DC, I'll start with you, mate. Thanks for jumping on. Where can the people find you on the socials and the HatChat pod? And then maybe give us your thoughts on what your sort of early trade sort of plans are. Because only got a couple of days until we've got footy again.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on again, Bales. You can find me at DC Caterpillars. You can find me on HatChat, the HatChat podcast at HatChat AFL as well. Trades, I haven't even looked at the price movements and stuff yet, but I would think McRae's a decent chance of coming in for me, possibly for Dempsey. And then Garcia, I don't have either, so he'll probably be the other side of that trade.
Yeah, cool. No, thanks, mate, very much for jumping on. Lemon, mate, thank you very much for jumping on again. Where can the people find you across the socials? And maybe just your early thoughts as well, who you might look at trading at and who you might be bringing in.
Always a pleasure, Bales. People can find me on Twitter at lemon_DT. Feel free to shoot through some spicy questions or whatever you've any kind of strategy chat. Always love to jump on and have a strategy chat with the community. Early trades, I've got a bit of coin in the bank and I'll be looking to use it. So the first question is whether I trade Grundy now or ride him for another week. And then I'll go from there, maybe 2 small upgrades rather than just doing one big upgrade. But it depends on if we get any rookies that come through that I like the look of. We'll see what happens with teams. It's a very short turnaround. It's going to be a tricky week with these early games as well. So just triple check your teams, make sure your emergencies are in the right spot, and they're not going to lock you out of a trade because we've got all this DPP. This is a crazy week to have all of these changes come through. It's going to be a tough one, I think. Hopefully not too much carnage. Yeah,
exactly right. Yeah, it's going to be a bit of a full-on week, but no, thanks, Lemon, for jumping on, mate. My early trade plans, I'll probably go. Musselman will be going out. It just depends if I go a rookie out as well, or if I go Zach Williams up. If I go Williams up, might be able to get a Dacos or a midfield premium in. But if I decide to go rookie down and Musselman up, might be a Jack McRae or someone like that coming in for me. So I'll be looking at something to do with that. But thank you, everyone, for joining us. So we had nearly 1,200 people. We got nearly 1,200 people still tuning in live across Twitter and YouTube. So Thanks very much, everyone, for tuning in. Special thanks to those in particular that did tune in live and those that sent in questions. You can send your questions to us on X. Please follow us at AFL Fantasy Fans over on Twitter. Don't forget to tune in live each week after the final sign of each round on X and YouTube for our round review, along with Fridays at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and 4 p.m. Western Standard Time for our pre-lockout chats. That'll be back on Friday coming up. And we'll probably also have a Q&A video on Tuesday night as well, being the fact there's a game on the Wednesday. So I might do a Q&A video over on YouTube there if you guys might want to tune into that there. Finally, you can listen to these spaces on the AFL Fantasy Podcast wherever you get your podcast. Please subscribe to the podcast and give us a 5-star rating and review. Rage straight away. Best of luck with your research, and we'll catch you again at the same time next week. Thanks, and bye for now. Cheers.